Hey, what's up, everybody? You're now tuned in live to Super Heru Radio. I am your host, Heru, along with your co-host, Selena, 10,000 years, Douglas Side, you, the greatest Super Heru and your family, as well as everybody that's been supporting us as listeners, you know what I mean, for all of this long. So we really want to extend thanks and praise for holding us down all these years, actually. So, you know how we always do. We always start with the current events. Also, just to reiterate to everybody, due to the fact that the Friday slot show, being that we're paying for it, started to become more intense in terms of people coming through and all of that, we had to kind of like phase it out just due to the fact that cost-effective-wise, being that we don't, get a lot of donations and stuff, we weren't able to maintain that per se. But Monday, like I said, we always here, and we'll be here until we find a new home for Super Heru Radio. So, like I said, thank you for those who have supported. And again, I'm not talking to people who have donated in the past, have held us down and all of that. It's just, I'm just keeping it 100 as to why we have to pull back some of the services that we have been offering in terms of that knowledge, Wow, there's so many things going on. One of the biggest things going on right now is the fact that there's been a rash, like I said, of so-called zombie incidences throughout the country in recent months or recent times. And it has now reached the level where you're receiving 1 or 2 reports of these things a week. 1 or 2 reports of this thing almost a week. So the latest report says that the guy who they were looking for in L.A. or whatever was may have actually stopped off in Cleveland or some other place and killed and chopped up some other people. Now, the other side of this, which is interesting, is the fact that the first guy, well, he technically wasn't the first, but he was the one that they talked about first. Black man on the bridge who allegedly ate the face of the homeless man. The interesting thing about that whole spiel is the fact that the homeless man, that when they did the autopsy on the brother's name is Eugene something, when they did the autopsy on him, they found no remnants of any human matter or flesh or anything like that in his stomach, which means that he did not eat that person in the way that they purported it to be. So then what that goes to say to me is that means that maybe the other one that happened with the black man as the zombie situation in Morgan State and all that, maybe that didn't happen like that either, because like I said, it's not only cannibalism that's on the rise with these instances, it's also a form of psychological operation basically being run down. You know what I mean? Now, coincidentally enough, there's a naval base not too far. They don't really talk about it, but not too far where the brother was found on the bridge. And so being that there was a whole missing time with this person for about 3 to 4 hours, and then the next thing you know, he mysteriously shows up naked, crazy on the Brooklyn Bridge, allegedly eating or gnawing on this man's face. This allegedly has become something where the reason that they put it out there may not actually be what happened, which, again, is no big surprise in dealing with a Luciferian government, but at the same token, it is what it is. Another interesting thing, development-wise, pertaining to that is the fact that the FDA is under legislation or whatever right now to basically legalize they have the morning after pill. Well, now they're trying to produce a pill that basically is called an induction pill. And this is the next level step up from the pill that, from the the morning after pill. This is way deeper because this pill actually allows you to actually give birth or whatever. It breaks down so many uterine walls or whatever in the situation that there is no limit now, let's say, if this pill passes as to when they can abort a fetus or when a child can be aborted. So they're talking about this thing works up to 9 months. So what this says to me is that the political protocol for population is really, really reaching a fever pitch, especially as we get closer to, December 21st, just due to the fact that we have always been and will always be the majority in the world. Is just that in the so-called federal system, as they refer to it, there's definitely an issue going on in the sense that they are totally at war, and now that they're going into the reorganization of the so-called American democracy into a straight-up American totalitarian regime, there are certain things and people that have to be sequestered and put in place before everything, gets brought down. Now, the problem with all of these plans, like we said, is the best laid plans of mice and men often fail before they begin. And the issue is that they are functioning from a perspective that they've already lost. So that means everything that they win is really a big win for them. You understand what I'm saying? Because when you already, it's like what they say, when you're sleeping on the floor, you can't fall out the bed. You know what I'm saying? So that's essentially where the so-called federal or whatever government is right now. They basically have been living so high off the hog now that a lot of the black programs and things that they set up back in the days is now coming home to roost now. So in this specific, like I said, in the specific auspices of the government now, they're dealing with all of these wars, but at the same time, they're dealing with how to foment the wars that these wars are supposed to lead into. You understand? You have to understand, government supports itself. Government is not supported by people. The people who actually work in the government are the people who are down with what the government is doing. Now, this don't mean that every person that works for the federal government is a stooge or a government bagman or an assassin or whatever, but it is to say that if you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. That you have seen recently, very recently, this government and people in it literally cannibalizing themselves. You know what I'm saying? At a state when they're supposed to be unifying and getting together for the war against the Great Red Dragon. Now, some people think in the prophecy of the Bible, when they talk about the Great Red Dragon, they're talking about Russia. In my opinion, they're talking about a three-pronged aspect of that. The first Red Dragon, in a sense, was Britain, of course we know. Then there's Russia, but then there's China. I think in the research that I'm doing, based on some of the Apocrypha that I've been reading, that China basically is the linchpin in the whole thing. We've been talking about how much China's been doing all of these, months since we've been on the show, but it's getting really crazy now in the sense that they are basically considering aspects or members of the Chinese elite or Chinese government is actually considering aspects of how to deal with trying to stop the world war. You done? The world war that I'm talking about is, in a sense, what we refer to as World War V, World War VI. This war is strictly based on the establishment of what they refer to as a new feudalistic world empire. But the real reason, or I should say, but the fomented reasons that they've been using this thus far is based upon the aspect of why these countries are really fighting one another. It's not for freedom. It's not for democracy. It's not to give people a better way of life. It's not to promote democracy and free trade and free government. It's not any of that. None of that has anything to do with what it is they're talking about. The fact that this guy who is allegedly the cousin, first 9th cousin and 11th cousin of both George Bush and Dick Cheney, and basically made references that I didn't want to really put that out there during the campaign, basically says that he was basically fudging everything and he was kind of hiding his true affiliation. So, again, because black people are, or we as black people have become so, almost churchified again, where we really go by the dynamic feeling that somebody gives us as opposed to the long-term acumen. What is this person talking about? Where does this person come from? What are they really, kicking to us? How can this really benefit us as a people, whatever? Because we don't really do that anymore. There is no way to check the present system as it stands just due to the fact that the system itself basically running perpetually off of no real truth. And whenever you have a society or government or anything where truth is now basically just kind of outlawed, or people are not necessarily contributing to the greater, let's say, glory of the society itself, then you wind up with anarchy. And so, case in point, you just had a giant firefight that went down in Michigan between the federal government and what they refer to as some government informant, where, this quote-unquote skirmish between members of the so-called president's federal police as well as military police wound up really turning into some next-level shit. And this thing, it was on Wednesday on the 6th, there was an explosion, you know what I mean, that blew up a lot of stuff, or really shook a lot of people in what they refer to as northeastern Michigan. And these explosions basically were going on and were heard all the way as far as what they refer to as Hillman, which is like man-miles away. And so this so-called underground firefight, because remember we told you a couple of months ago when the giant vents that all over the planet started being vented, there was a sound that was traveling all over the world that everybody was hearing, and it almost sounded like a giant wail or wailing. And so essentially, come to find out that this was basically due to the nuclear explosion that went down in one of the underground bunkers or cities that they've been, or highways that they've been striving to build in the country for the past 25 years. Specifically because CIA is moving itself from Langley, Virginia, all the way to the Denver, Colorado airport area. And the story goes, or allegedly the story goes, is that they have been using these underground passageways to move a lot of their material, such as files, desks, operations, weaponry, intel products, stuff like that. Intel products and stuff like that. So these things basically have started to happen. So in comparison to that, something happened a couple months ago where there was, like I said, a nuclear explosion and they were somehow attacked. And so these quote-unquote American rebel forces, this is just the words they're using there, these quote-unquote American rebel forces decided to have a 48-hour standoff with the man in traced to these underground facilities. Underground facilities, according to the United States, are referred to as DUMBs. I forget the acronym for that now, but it stands for Demilitarized Underground Military Bases. Right. And so these DUMBs have been coming under attack. So far, in terms of the chain and the network, they tend to travel all across the country, meaning the tunnels that the United States government made. However, these tunnels that the United States government made were really based on tunnels that already existed there, going all the way back to pre-American times. You know what I'm saying? But again, nobody really does the knowledge to where and how this stuff comes about. So, a lot of that gets lost in the record. But I have old files about old gold mines and stuff that they were allegedly trying to mine, and from there it broke into whole giant caverns and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So this basically is going down, and it went down so heavy because a lot of the wars and the political infighting that's going on between these two factions within the government are basically warring at each other so hard now, you know what I mean, banging on each other so hard now that they're finding it harder to keep the war covert because now it's spilling over into the greater, you know what I mean, populace. Like you can only explain these explosions but so many ways, you know what I'm saying? So, like I said, due to that, it's funny because then all of a sudden, from all of that happening, a bill got promoted in the House yesterday, I think, in which they're now trying to find a way to legally stop people from purchasing guns. Because as some of the reports say, if you read some of the old internet sites or whatever that talk about this event, some of them will talk about some will be more explicit with the details of it than others, but nobody really busts down to who these so-called American rebels are. So, that being said, this is definitely an interesting time just due to astrologically, again, what's been going down with that shit. You know what I mean? But you got to remember, these underground cities, tunnels, whatever, existed also when you and I basically were a part of the so-called Grand American Old Dominion or whatever. These things are millions and millions of years old, some of these tunnels. Yet the ones that they are building are really maybe a quarter of a mile or maybe 5 miles above where the original tunnels really start. So whatever or whoever is down there may not want them down there no more. And in the process of that, this is now becoming a major battle for them. Because like I said, they can only explain away this stuff over so much now. You know what I'm saying? So essentially there's that. So with that, we've got 4 planets right now that's traveling through Gemini, right? And with these planets specifically, as we do the knowledge to them, are really there to make you more lighthearted, to not let you be so crazy and serious with a lot of the crazy, serious shit that's going down. You know what I'm saying? The drawback, though, during this time of conscious whimsy, if you will, is a tendency to rely too heavily on logic. You know what I mean? When making plans dealing with how you want to solidify everything, in the future and shit right now, because this is a time of almost like counting your blessings. You know what I mean? Seeing what you've been able to accomplish despite all of the obstacles and things like that going on around you and trying to throw you off of doing your thing. So the square between Uranus and Aries, the square between Uranus, Aries, and Pluto in Capricorn, which makes a lot of sense with some of the stuff that went down. And in the process of that, Capricorn begins to tighten, you know what I'm saying, this month, where when it comes direct on the 24th, the energy, you know what I mean, of the energy of not feeling like totally settled, you know what I'm saying? The energy of unhappiness, discontent, you know what I mean, quote unquote rebellion, will definitely be very heavy during this time, you know what I mean, which is also contributing to individuals that are stronger. What also happens is that a lot of people in these situations, in these governments, in these so-called blood families or whatever, a lot of these people are starting to realize that they have more power outside of the family by themselves than they do with it. Case in point, the whole thing that happened with Jay Electronica boning the white chick, the Rothschild chick. That basically has thrown everything into a frenzy, so much so that all of a sudden now, what has happened is that Standard & Poor, who put out the whole thing that the United States credit rating got downgraded or whatever, and they constantly downgraded shit, all of a sudden now you have countries that are now appealing and basically putting out documentation against Standard & Poor and basically trying to take them to court and saying that they're basically a part of the same cartel, that the whole credit rating report for nations and countries is basically being run by the same people who are running the banks and the countries themselves. Therefore, Standard & Poor is just really another instrument in the war, in the real financial war that's going on. The real financial war, again, to reiterate, that's going on is the whole aspect of the United States federal government, which has nothing to do with the American continental republic. But within that, what's happening is that they are starting to realize specifically that they have to aggressively attack any and all countries that are seeking to step outside of the dollar bill standard. So because you had a big summit meeting at the same time the Bilderberg was going on of the Black Dragon Society over there in China, they basically have put out an edict that they are willing to fund natural technology and fund and give subsidies to countries, 10 to 20 year subsidies to countries that agree to stop using the United States currency as a means to fulfill its debt obligations and to switch over to the new currency that they want to flip up. Now, the Amero and the Euro, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. The Amero and the Euro essentially was set up by, the Soros company and the bankers and stuff like that. But at the same time, some of those countries in the European Union began to see what was going down and began to diversify their incomes to stay ahead of what was going to happen to Greece. Now, any countries that basically find themselves outside of the sphere of the so-called European Union, though all them countries are going to get gobbled up by the United States and Britain. Because the United States and Britain, again, are the only countries in the world who outsource their natural currency as a world currency. Now, Britain fell victim and learned from the mistake of doing that. What this basically means in layman's terms when you're dealing with money and commerce is the fact that your national currency and your international currency need to be two different things. The same way we had Articles of Association which governed the tribes or the pre-tribes coming together into the Articles of Confederation, which then led to the Constitution for the United States of America, right? So that whole process of bringing this country or bringing that into existence was already protected by the rules of engagement and protocol that was used to bring everybody into the family. Nowadays, it's different in the sense that the family of nations is not truly recognized. And the family of nations is the thing that we as indigenous, original Moorish or Tuamocan people were the ones who really dealt with, you dig? So the fact that they're not dealing with that and they've created what they call the law of nations through the United Nations has erroneously put them on the outside of the, let's say, respected national identity of a country. Essentially what they have basically done with the 14th Amendment is made every man, woman, and child not only a slave in the United States, they've also made them chattel property. So that chattel property has the ability, or they feel needs to have the ability now to start to discern how much of the population they want to get rid of at the time. But again, all of this is based upon people using dollar bills, though. So once people stop, or these countries agree that they don't want to use dollar bills anymore, what this does is it puts the United States at a detriment, because the United States cannot purchase anything with gold. So if these sovereigns, as they call it, that's where the term sovereign in political talk nowadays is being used in reference to gold, not rights. Okay? So the British learned this lesson about the devaluation of their currency during World War II, because up until then, Britain was running the world with the shilling, right, and the pound. But what wound up happening was that they felt they was doing so good and was living high off the hog so well that they said, well, what we'll do too is that any of the colonies that we basically take over, what we'll do is we'll make them adopt the pound and the shilling as well. But what that did was it stretched the resource base of their indigenous economy, and so it became more about preserving the keeping the coffers of the empire's satellites or territories fixed with gold, so that way they wouldn't revolt against the overall monarchy that was basically borrowing gold from the original Coburg-Saxe-Gotha, the original Moors or Gypsy or ancient Moorish or black nobility in Europe. Again, many books you can get. Nature Knows No Color Line, J.A. Rogers, Sex and Race, Volumes 1, 2, and 3, J.A. Rogers. Temples, Tombs, and Hieroglyphs, Popular History of Ancient Egypt by Mertz. You could also get The Decline and Fall of the Ottoman Empire by Palmer. You can also get The Ottomans by Andrew Wheatcroft. Another good one on this is Knights Templar in the Golden Age of Spain by Wasserman. By Atienza. They realized that what happened, or what was happening, was that they didn't have enough money to keep their subjects in line. So they had to start to borrow money from this indigenous aspect of the Holy Roman Empire that was now being oversaw by the Archduke Ferdinand, what they call the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs are different than the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs, or the Habsburgs, were the original blacks, right? The Habsburgs of the Hanseatic League, or whatever, were the fake ones that came in after the deposition of the Holy Roman Empire as ancient land owners. And so this, again, all plays into what I'm saying with the square between Uranus and Aries and Pluto. Uranus being the planet of uniqueness, having your own thing, being individual, not being able to be held down by what somebody else wants you to do. Aries is all initiating, right? Bringing things into existence regardless of who or what. Pluto is a sign of hidden agendas, covert operations, espionage, anything done in the dark. You know what I'm saying? All of this, again, when these things square with each other, it can create almost a light-hearted aspect. But those people who can't see the humor in some of the mistakes and things that may manifest are the ones who are going to be the most adversely affected in this period. And that goes, again, to the powers that be in terms of, like what I'm saying with this government thing, them realizing that they don't really have the ability to hold out anymore in terms of the overall plan. So when we talk about the quote-unquote New World Order and all of that, we're talking about an aspect of integrationism that is about to be flipped up, in which, like I said, they done got it so ill now, when people talk about the quote-unquote Illuminati, they think they're talking about Jay-Z and Beyonce. You know what I'm saying? Or French Montana, or one of these other niggas, you know what I'm saying? As if that has anything to do with the real. You know what I mean? But because these original people have let themselves be the poster child of that, you know what I mean? It allows them a certain degree of illusionary power amongst people within that strata. So these niggas are so crazy that they give these white people so many passes that when this chick Gwyneth Paltrow put out that thing talking about I'm chilling with niggas in Paris, it created a big backlash. But the people who was defending her again was who? The niggas, right? Because they're saying that, well, we chill with her, she mad cool, blah, blah, blah. But if you really think about it, anytime anybody ever referred to you or talked to you about their white friend or whatever, the first thing they say to you as a black man or black woman is what? Like, yeah, he's white, but he's mad cool, right? There's always that disclaimer that we put out for them. Cool, but he's mad cool. White, but he's mad cool. That type of shit, like I said, is us giving the devil a pass, and that's cool. You know what I'm saying? If that's warranted. But just know, when it comes to mainstream shit like that, a lot of these niggas wouldn't do the same for you. Because what we are still not acknowledging is the fact that we are in a genetic war now. They phased the whole genetic thing to another level. So these black babies that you see getting adopted every other day, we know they have already come out reports about what they was doing with them, killing them, all of that. Well, the other night, we had some sisters over here, and it turns out that one of them was a product of something like that. And she basically just corroborated. She grew up in that cipher. She was taken from the, black people and was raised with, affluent, quote-unquote, white people, even though they happen to be down with the intelligence agency, specifically CIA. And what happened and the things that was done to her, whatever, as she was growing up, and how she's had to deal with a lot of that shit now, and how that affects your choices. The problem is we as original people haven't come to the epiphany that the term abuse, the term abuse, so if you will, and what we perceive as child abuse, elderly abuse, this abuse, or whatever, that abuse is one of the biggest things that's destroying not only humans, but the world itself. Abuse of power, abuse of drugs, abuse of women, abuse of children, abuse of animals, everything, right? Abuse of the original man and woman, abuse of the earth, right? But the purpose of the abuse, how do we assess that? How do we put pin a explanation on that? Well, we do this by looking at, again, historical instances in which societies have gone through upheavals. And whenever there's a so-called revolution or a society going from one phase to the other, there's always whoever was at the top in the last society has got to be at the bottom in the new one. That's just how it works. When the Hebrews left Egypt, what did they do? They allegedly wandered, right, and then they eventually decided to come and get rid of the Canaanites. But the Hebrews and the Canaanites and the Kemites were essentially all related, because they all basically were the same people who began to operate or began to practice things differently. And began to practice things and operate with things like that differently. So again, we're talking about understanding the cycles of time and how society itself begins to trickle down. And at the end of any given empire or society, there are always freak occurrences and things like that that go undocumented until so much of it happens that there is no even room or time to document anything. It's just what it is. So again, like I said, social engineering, city planning, zoning, all of these things are used as tools to genetically identify and keep people in different places away from each other, so that way they will not basically come to understand that they are not being run by human governments anymore. I don't think there's been a human government, especially in the United States, in this country since before 1791. Mostly if you go back to 1774, those Moorish scholars, and they want to look into something referred to as the Mecklenburg Constitution, or the Mecklenburg Constitution, or the Mecklenburg Declaration that was put forth by the Watagan Moors in 1774, which was, again, a documentary precept to the so-called eventual Constitution that would come later in 1791. But remember, 1774, there was no so-called United States government like that, or there was no federal government like that. So, if that's the case, then what were these people doing? What Constitution? If they were not part of the so-called United States at the time, because it did not exist, when they put forth this Constitution, who was the Constitution in benefit of? So now some people say, oh, that's the Indians. But again, when we talk about the Indians, most of these people that they're talking about as Indians today are not that. They were referred to at one point in history as the Wild Red Men. Even in the movie John Carter, they were referring to the Caucasian men who were darker. All of them had dark hair, which meant they wanted them to look more like Sicilians. They were basically saying that they called them red men. Now, they also call a group of Cherokees or band of Cherokees who are affiliated with the old Kituwa Society red men as well, but they called them that because of the red flag that they were flying at the time. This can be looked at in a book called Africans and Indians, Lost Asiatic Kingdoms of Ancient America by Barry Fell, Saga America by Barry Fell. Very good. There's another one called, of course, the classic African Presence in Early America, other than Certain of Blessed Dead. So these political things have spiritual occurrences with us that we will mistake as evidence of some sort of problem with us. And sometimes what's happening is you're just reacting through your sympathetic nervous system to the atrocities that you feel traveling through the Earth's magnetic sphere in any given day. Everybody say, oh, cancers are crazy. You know what I'm saying? But what they don't understand is that crazy, again, like David Chappelle say, is a dismissive word. It's something that people use to write off huge segments of the population. Cancers are not crazy. What it is that cancers are ruled by the moon. And cancer itself as a sign is a, let's say, intuitive feminine type of sign, just like Aries, let's say, is a traditionally masculine sign. So any man born under Cancer or any woman born under Cancer is not born under a detriment per se, but they're born at a phase where they have to learn how to deal with the opposite energies that they feel in terms of their expression. So because they're ruled by the moon, Cancer specifically, that means every 2.5 hours they're in a different place, meaning a different sign. But again, because our people don't understand astrosophics or astrology itself, we look at it as some sort of devilishment based upon what's said to it, specifically through the Christian segment of our population, based on what it says in the Bible about people who divine and retard. But in my interpretation of that Bible verse, it was really talking about people who are using that to put roots in their own people and consult the stars or whatever against their own people. Because if the Creator didn't want us to do the knowledge to the universe or anything else, then why would it, allow everything to be made open for us to understand? So spiritually, like I said, we're reaching this time where you may be feeling a lot of angst, almost like an anticipation, but also maybe like a little giddiness. You know what I mean? Like, this is a time where you have to practice not being so heavy with what it is you're retaining in terms of information, as well as the spiritual effect of that information on you as an individual. Same way they have institutes through the New Age movement that are developed specifically to New Age ideas and modalities of healing and things like that. It's the same way we can have that as original indigenous, Samarkand, Moorish, Asiatic, Comesian, Moabitic, Canaanitic, whatever you want to call it, people. But, however, we have certain things that we got to deal with in the meantime to be able to get to that point, to trust each other enough to have these type of workshops that you can fully feel like yourself in. The worst thing you want to do is start to retain all of this information and knowledge and feel like you are more superior to the 85 or more or better. When you do the knowledge, you was 85 at one point, too. We all was. So there was always a place or a time in us when we had to go through an aspect of not knowing to know. So once you know, it's not good to lord over and use knowledge as a means to control and enslave other people, or the lack thereof of that knowledge, or the dependence of those people who have understood that you have certain knowledge to be able to share with them. This don't mean that you got to be totally selfless and not receive anything back, because we're supposed to. They say a workman is worthy of his hire. Therefore, everyone is worthy to be compensated for what they do or provide for someone else. And unfortunately, as human beings, we have to create something like currency or money to keep from going ham on each other, you know what I'm saying, in terms of running the society. Money and commerce came into our society in after pre-dynastic Kemet. You know what I'm saying? Like in pre-dynastic Kemet is when all of that was when all of that was dominant. Prior to that, we wasn't really dealing with it in the aspect, because back then, just like now in some places, you'll have places where the diamonds are alluvial. For those people that don't know what that means that the diamonds are just on the ground. Just like rocks, you see pebbles, you see diamonds, big ass, you know what I mean? Brick diamonds just laying on the dust, just laying in the ground. Just like gold and everything else. But instead of using it as necessarily as a mean of currency, we would use it as a form of adornment in gestation, because gold never loses its form. So you could melt it down to such a degree. It was a process of alchemical gold that was perfected in ancient Kemet. But when I say ancient Kemet, I'm just not talking about over there in what you now call Africa. I'm talking about over here too, where electron, which is gold, was transduced to a point where they could create a liquid, almost elixir, from it through the gold dust, and accentuate it with other properties and ingest it. When the gold is ingested, it doesn't necessarily get digested, but what happens is that because its form is solid, your body begins to react to it through the melanocytes that begin to activate it based upon its genetic memory of the practice of the ingestion of gold in that way. So, the adornment was also a form of self-regeneration, which is why we still wearing big-ass gold chains and all of that today. It's not necessarily a bad thing that brothers do that, you know what I mean? It just becomes a little obligatory in instances like the hood or rap, for instance, because we go for so long without having bread like that. It's like, now that we got it, we want to almost verify it not only to ourselves, but the rest of the world. Whereas rich, quote-unquote, white folk will wear a pair of shoes until they walk out of them. Whereas the richest of white folk don't even walk around with ID, money, nothing. They don't never have cash in their life. For some people, what happens is that when you come in, your chain is big, but the more you start to accumulate, your chains get smaller. You know what I mean? If you look at people like Rakim, if you look at people like EST, if you look at people like, well, not Slick Rick, but Jay-Z even, people like that, this is a process. Because when you really got it, you ain't necessarily got to shout it from the rafters. You only got to do that when you are being denied access or you are trying to prove something. And at this stage in the game, brothers and sisters, I don't think we have to prove anything to anyone else but ourselves. So like I said, there'll be people who don't like you, just like there's people that don't like me. But I don't necessarily look at them people as my enemies. They may look at me like that, but when I look at my life and situations, I have never wronged anyone on purpose. You know what I mean? You know how you meet some people who's just cross just because that's how they are? But what happens is when you are a child of the light, you won't necessarily get the open enemy. The enemy will always, it's like in the comic books, will always start as your friend because it's something that has to be grown. The discontent or the malcontent that the individual feels towards you is something that is nurtured over years. You know what I mean? Whereas some people, it's just instantaneous. Some people just look at you like, I don't like it. But what they're seeing is an aspect of something that they don't like within themselves. You know what I'm saying? So it's a specific time frame that we're operating in that would allow us to participate in a greater dialogue with one another if we could get past all of the stuff that we allow to keep ourselves from doing it, which mainly, in my opinion, is based on ideologies that if we all agree that we're original people, so have you, then we don't necessarily have to always get into, you know what I mean, whose thing is better and who need to, you know what I mean, pay more attention to this one. I mean, why this one is more qualified to lead than that one. Those who make themselves qualified become elected by their deeds, become worthy by their deeds, and the people elect them as to what they be. So I came in as the Duke of Tears, but the Duke of Tears had to be proven based upon the years of work that had to go in to me being allowed to be consecrated as that by the great Empress Nkweke Best. But she wouldn't have done that if I wasn't worthy of it. This is the only era in history in which the lamest niggas can get on and blow up, man. This is, you've never seen it. Some of these people who are doing things today, not just in rap and stuff like that, but just in world media in general, if they were doing it, what they did, they wouldn't be able to survive back then. But like I said, this is essentially the denationalization and the depopulation of the world body politics and the seductive need of the material realm to hold on to those who are destined to ascend spiritually out of it. I'm not talking about the hocus pocus, extra, crazy stuff. I'm talking about real physics, the reality of busting down the aspect of the body or the mind that is 50% non-physical, which could only be manifested in that form through either a gas or a light. Therefore, the light then is used to transcend one's actual spiritual manifestation, the part that you pray to and the part that you pray for, and the part that interfaces between you and the real you and the creator you. That part is eternal. So it has no physical, it has no bounds, but the bounds that can be set on it can be manipulated based upon your understanding of the energy through the meditation, through the breath, things like that. But these niggas are trying to fool you into believing you could do, yoga without moving. Like, that's maybe true in the hypothetical aspect of the mind, but if you want to lose weight and you want to get healthy and you want to have your heart rate, you got to actually sweat. You got to actually get up and do shit. You don't burn the same calories with the weed playing golf inside as you do when you actually playing golf with a human being outside. Don't let them fool you. Don't let them box you into this pseudo-reality that really does not exist. That's really just an arbitrary aspect to take you away from the bounty that nature has now provided to us that they want to take control of. So I hate always use the term they, yet the proverbial they has existed from Shakespearean time. In Othello, Iago said, I am not what I appear to be. And Iago, again, in Othello, was the one who took advantage of Othello's epilepsy, which, again, was a product of endogamy, as well as the destruction of the Moorish line in Cyprus, what they call the Cypriotic line, which had its connections all the way back to the Venetian black nobility, going all the way forward to the establishment of Portugal. They built Venice on top of a mud bog. Understand? They imported mud into a certain place. They just kept dumping mud, and and then built basically a floating city. Understand? This is what your ancestors did, man. Just because this person's name is Rabisi or Giamatti or Polinati or whatever, and your name is Jackson or Leroy, that don't mean that they're more related to that place than you. And I'm not trying to negate any Italian American or Spanish or Spaniard or so-called American or Italian, whatever, their place in that society. But you know to this day that they still practice the expulsion of the Moors in ritual from October 10th, 1492 to October 10th, 2012. This is what they do every year. But you think they got any Moors dressed with black skin in it? No. We got a bunch of Italians, again, dressed as Moors, who always reenact them being led away based on the power of the Catholic Church back in Aragon and Castile, which were not what they refer to as Spaniard. Remember, the term Spain was coined by Charles V, who existed in 1526. So how could that place that Castile and Aragon took from the Moors, Boabdil at Granada, how could that place then, or those people then, could be called Spanish, when the term wasn't even coined until 150 years after the event happened? Up to that point, they were Moriscos, or Frankish Moors, who were not with everything that was going on, even though they were the children and the brothers and sisters that grew up under them. It's the same way you could be a regular, quote-unquote, black man or black woman today, and then when you move into a Dominican neighborhood or you move to a Spanish neighborhood, it's the same thing. They speak in the language that you used to speak. You see what I'm saying? So in the end, it really doesn't matter. But what matters is the perception of you in that. If you are always the damn slave in the story in everybody's history, how could that be when the church in the Kremlin is dedicated to the black Madonna, the black woman and the black male child? So they want to destroy that archetype. They want to get rid of that heterosexual black child. And again, I'm not trying to impugn anyone who may happen to be homosexual. I'm just saying that nowadays that whole thing is being used as a means of military application, as a military application tool. It used to be when I was a kid, and I see my gay uncle and these people around. They was like they wasn't with how society was. It was not about marriage. They didn't want to get married. It was all about free love and all that other crap. Then all of a sudden it became about, okay, now, we want to be married. We want to have those rights. Like, what happened in 12 years? What happened between the closing of Studio 54 and Tu Wong Fu, when Tu Wong Fu came out? Because that was the first time I remember seeing a movie where I realized that this was a man who, I guess, appeared heterosexual in other movies like King of New York, whatever, but was now playing, like I noticed that it was a man in a dress. It was like the first movie I realized that this was a trend, And it didn't make me appreciate the movie. It didn't make me, like I don't see it as anything to do because it's become so arbitrary to black males that it is literally a form of debasement. Where you're literally debasing yourself to get money. And that's cool, man, if that's what you want to do. I'm just saying. I don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? So this becomes, again, the reality that we're all forced to deal with, whether we want to deal with it or not. So, the perpetual idea, of America as a body politic has now been substituted by America, the ever-changing mode of control, And so with all of these troops being taken out of Iraq and all of this stuff, what people don't realize is that when they were talking about WMDs, they were talking about old, ancient, quote-unquote, Sumerian, Elamite, Moabite weaponry. that had been left over from the Ramayana dynasty, which goes back into ancient Hindu or Hindu-Kush Dravidian mythology. But these weapons that were basically categorized in the writings of Minerta, which really read like a checklist of like all the stuff they see, you know, after the Great Celestial War, whatever. So those batteries that they said that they found when they first came and made the push through Baghdad or whatever, that was all of the stuff that those batteries was the mold that they used to hypothesize how much was actually there. One of the only reasons why they messed with Saddam in that was because allegedly his family had one of the secrets as to where Minerta's tomb was, or the weapons cache really was. So whether they found it or not, you know what I mean, they didn't find no quote-unquote weapons of mass destruction, but the weapons that they did find, again, were taken in the form of the artifacts that they told you that came up missing after the whole initial skirmish. Them artifacts, a.k.a. Minerta weaponry from the Ramayana dynasty, we're talking over 192,000 years ago. One of the events that led to the Great Cataclysm and the destruction of Atlantis. When you read, again, the Popol Vuh or know how to read these things, you know what I'm saying? So these ancient technologies and things like that have now, the same way they're coming online now, and they're just bugging, they don't know how to use it, but they still be trying to use it or whatever, the same way they're coming online in you, because we're the only people who can operate that stuff. We're the only people who could really know how any of it works. That, coupled with the fact that we have no idea that we are that, allows us to be used in an archetypical fashion, ritualistically, instead of an active fashion. So just like all things, Freemasonry ritual is basically speculative. It becomes operative when whatever's discussed in the lodge or was ever discussed or agreed upon within that cipher comes into play in the quote-unquote realm of the profane. Because that's what they call anybody that's not a so-called Freemason. They call you a profane. You understand? Because you haven't taken the oath of Lucifer. So in the acquisition of the light, one must subject themselves to become the identity of quote-unquote, the devil or Lucifer itself, and one must emulate his ascendancy and fall by reminiscently being led across the rough and rugged road. That basically is the period in the ritual where they are simulating walking the so-called devil across the hot Arabian desert into the caves of West Asia with nothing but the apron or whatever to shield his nakedness, which is why the apron is made of lambskin. It's like condoms. These subtle intricacies, become the basis of what we would call the spell. Or the disassociation between the underlying meaning and the intent and what is perceived as both by the so-called vulgar masses. It's so deep. Like I said, this is a time of like whimsical realization and paying attention to the finer details, but not getting so wrapped up as to how it could be detrimental to you in the long run. It's more the opposite. It's more to learn from it and then keep moving. You know what I mean? And access the real position of your decision to be conscious at this time. So it's really, really real, man. You know what I'm saying? It's to the point where we have the ability to actualize our dreams, you know what I mean, and see a reward / profit / intent to make something better for ourselves and our generational legacies. These are the most important things, in my view, to the establishment of a coalition of like-minded individuals that seek to unify in a form of material protection that would allow a place to exist that true spiritual realization through things like theocratic jurisprudence and the omnipresent aspect of melanin in all of its facets of expression that comprise who and what we are, as well as reality. Yet they have mastered the ability to hold your melanin through stress. So we always have to find ways to, again, delegate and stay away from things that will put us in positions of false servitude, in my opinion. So that, like I said, coupled with this whole new, like I said, banking thing that they're about to drop on everybody, once the actual commitment of or no-fly zone is established over Syria, you'll have a basic formal outbreak into them trying to get further into the African interior. You're going to start to hear about another so-called African warlord killing people or whatever, to try to bring that up, to try to stir up, again, racial situations over here, not only between blacks and whites, but blacks and Africans. Because most of the fighters that they're training, a lot of the fighters that they're training happen to be African. Some of these so-called children rebel soldiers that they're taking have been taken, and they bring them to the farm. For those people that don't know, is the farm is where the CIA does its recruiting, and they're raising these kids there, raising them to kill and all that, kill black people. So, again, these are just some of the things that go down in the real world, you know, that your enemy uses to get us caught up in, when really it is really ever-present means to disassociate black men and black women from themselves and each other. It's always about keeping us apart, you understand? It's always about not accepting the fact that we need each other. It's always about have your baby, give it to somebody else. Think about the time, the unfortunate time that was created or spent in which you had to go to work and not be there with your child, and have to leave your child and care for someone else. All of the time accumulated. You could do the average yourself, since you had to go back to work or whatever. Do the accumulated time of the time that you spent, you know what I mean, not with your children based on work. Now, in any other society, that would be negligence. That's why in other societies, the work-based, even in the sweatshops and all that, man, they got regulations. Let these niggas fool you, man. They're always going to tell you their country better than everybody else's country. They got to do that, man. They got to create situations where they have that popping. They got to. It's the only way they can foment the war that they have to fight now, which is a war based on stopping people from using an alternative form of currency as a means of financial and commercial interest. They don't want people using gold. They don't want people using that type of stuff. But at the same time, there's a segment of them that do want that. They are talking about legalizing weed or reducing the penalties of weed in New York, the ultimate police state. And I can say that because I'm from there. The ultimate. You know what I'm saying? If they talking about that, once they do that, the next phase is to legalize it, same way they did with Prop, whatever it was in Los Angeles all those years ago. You know how many people are serving time for weed and all that? That means that they'll have to let all the people out of jail. Once all these people come out of jail, once they all come out of jail, where are they gonna get the dough? How are they gonna survive? Where are they gonna get money from? This is where the government now can come in and tax weed. They can now put on shit on weed and say what type of weed is best and what strain can be grown and what strain can be smoked. Legalization could be a horrible thing. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like the America that Peter Tosh even was talking about back then. I think, in my opinion, a lot of these quote-unquote crackers or rednecks or whatever you want to call them were more civilized when they was openly hanging niggas from the trees than now. Integration set boundaries. You'll always see movies about them lynching us and stuff like that in the South, but you don't really see the real movies that went down in the South, where black militias, black men in black hoods was going through the South, Old South, finding out who was in the Klan and all of that, because a lot of these niggas was the bell boys and the shoe shine boys and the numbers runners and stuff for the white establishment. So they knew who was who, what was what. These brothers basically put a stop to lynching in a couple of states for a little while, you know. But it was never really went into. The same way that they talk about all the slave rebellions, the slave revolts that went down, that they, in a sense, didn't record. There was more that they didn't record than ones that actually did, where they actually came out on top. But to the victor goes the spoil. So whoever's going to say and do what is going to be the one that's going to be able to say and do what. You know what I'm saying? So this new healthcare situation has become an inadequate position for him to be in, because once they veto it or whatever they do to it, it's going to be the first in the series of open attacks in which they basically start to go in and try to create some type of scandal or something on this dude again. But the birther thing didn't work. The thing didn't work. Didn't work. But this healthcare thing, based upon the open aggression with the Catholic Church, that's going to put him at odds with a certain portion of the so-called family. But now that the homie is piping the Rothschild chick, that's a kibosh to deal, which is now reflecting on the shares of some of the Rothschild properties on the NASDAQ today. Any family that practices endogamy and things like that will be plagued by things like sexual abuse. There's one study that is being basically orchestrated or being looked into that basically goes to say that molestation in a lot of instances becomes the motivating factor for people to practice same-sex relationships. Now, only people in those societies and in those relationships can actually attest to whether or not that is true, but how many would really agree to it based upon the openness you'll have to be in the accreditation of those incidents. So the need for national body politics of mainstream so-called conscious people is just as important as that of the so-called underground or, unsung hero type conscious people. But remember, one hand wash the other, both hands wash the face. So the face in this sense represents the imagery of us for the past 250 years in this country, based upon Manifest Destiny, Louisiana Purchase. No. Louisiana Purchase. Don't lay down. They basically become an extension of this policy that they cannot stop. And in that, it has driven them mad and almost insane, basically, due to the constant reminder that the whole thing could just come tumbling down at any instant. Yet to the face, to the world, we must make it all perceive as the empire is expanding. Yet the emperor has no clothes, you know what I'm saying? Because the society itself has eroded to such a degree that it warrants a cleaning, a general cleaning, and everybody feel it, and everybody know it. But the more distraction, the more things that's put out to be able to dissuade the true public intellect becomes the ability for us to, within ourselves, become lazy in the expression of our true culture and nationality. So what is the use, what is the true use then of declaring a nationality if you are declaring it to a people who are not your home? This is how the quote-unquote cracker or the black mason is looking at what you're saying. So again, the purpose of what we're doing, if we don't have treaties with each other, if we don't have representation to back each other up, not only on paper but in word and deed, then what is the use of really declaring anything? Because in that you're protecting yourself to a point. Up until, due to the disorganization of us as a group of people, and by us I mean poor people, but by poor I mean financially only destitute, if you will. We are at odds with the accumulation of that wealth and then what to do with it once we got it. But the problem is most people who get it by getting it with these people from the outset without establishing a distinct boundary that display what they can and cannot do. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody got a boss. Yet, if everybody's sovereign, if everybody believes as a nation of gods on earth that black man and black woman is God, then we're talking about something that really can be rectified if given a chance. You know what I'm saying? So let's see if we get some calls. Okay. 702 on Super Heru Radio.
Brother Aseer, how you doing there?
Peace. I'm good, King. How you doing?
It's so good to hear your voice live, my brother. Much blessings to you and yours.
Thank you, fam.
You hanging in there, man?
Yeah, man, one day at a time.
Yeah, that's all we can do nowadays. It's not like how it used to be.
No, sir, it really isn't.
I go through a whole lot, but I just want to get your opinion on something.
Yeah.
How do you feel about people like me and you getting involved with law enforcement as far as employment?
It goes one or two ways. You can go in with the intent to create something that can be fair and balanced to the people, or you could learn the ways and tactics of it for a time, and then apply the parallel tactics of that once you leave, in the form of creating almost like a black neighborhood watch to prevent instances like Trayvon and stuff like that from happening. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
but
okay.
Almost like some spook who sat by the door shit.
Okay, that makes sense. What you're saying there, but at the same time, I've never really had any kind of I've never felt it in a positive way at all about law enforcement. And when I moved in this area, it was almost like when I came out here, I didn't have anything, but I always tried to keep a clean record so that just in case I want to speak out, they can't hold anything to me.
Right.
So when I moved out here, I didn't have nothing, so somebody put me on to a gig, and I took it, or whatever. But during this time, my spirituality was way different. But as I started doing it and seeing the patterns of it, I was like, something ain't right with this. And I always wondered why I didn't like the system. Right, so
set up
yeah, so it came to a point where it started affecting my health.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to ignore this, I'm trying to be positive about it because I'm surviving.
Right.
But it started to affect my health. Now, I'm going to tell you like this. You one of the main people that, they say when you're sleeping, people don't want to be awakened when they sleep.
Yes.
But you one of the main people that hit me a certain way to where I was like, okay. It woke me up.
Glad I can help.
And I had to let that job go. Now everybody around me is looking at me like, you crazy. Why would you do that? But ever since I let that job go, I've come across so much knowledge to where can't nobody tell me shit about myself.
Exactly.
So it was like at my pinnacle of that old spirituality, at my pinnacle, I was knocked off my feet, and when my head hit the ground, I entered another dimension, which was more real than where I was. So how is it that I was wrong for letting that job go? Even though I don't have what I used to have materialistically.
Yeah, that was your test, but you passed, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. But, I just wanted to let you know, man, you're doing good work, my brother.
Thank you, Sam.
And I'm not a follower, man. I don't follow people, but my thing is, if you put the meat out there, I'm gonna eat the meat and spit out the bone.
That's right.
I'm gonna take what I can for myself.
That's right.
So don't stop doing what you're doing, my brother.
I really appreciate the validation of the work, man. It really helps.
Oh yeah. And it's a reason why you're not as blessed monetarily as some of these old fools out here that's talking about money every time they put a show on. You have all these goddamn guests on your show, to make it look like you're doing something positive. But these goddamn guests is taking a part of the pot with you. They all feeding. You say you're helping the community, but you're taking from the community.
Exactly.
So if you're trying to help me, why do I need to spend money on this here water and all this all these things It don't make no motherfucking sense. Get that water out of here. Hold the motherfucking conferences. Let's get this movement going and get these matter of fact, get all these books and all this shit out here that you're selling. If you want to help me give me that shit.
That's what I'm
but
saying.
Donations, that's cool for a person like you. That's cool because, like I say, when I came across Aseer and a couple of other ones that I really felt, it really helped me, man.
Indeed. Me too, man. I feel the same way. And the unfortunate aspect is that in the way it was, at least when I was in the, forefront of it like that, I wasn't really even trying to really take the bait of a lot of things that was put out there for me to, I felt specifically. And
exactly.
The more, the more I started to do the analysis of how it was running and who was really into what, the more I started to see that it was something else going on. So, from the street.
Damn right, man. A smile ain't nothing but an upside-down frown.
And then you just start doing you. But, see, you can do you so hard where people feel like they can't do them. And that's the real issue. Like, I've always been into the things that I've shared with the community that I'm into, rapping, comic books, things like that. So, in me putting out material that can educate not only them, but allow me to express these aspects and still bang on the man through it, then that's what I can contribute to it. But unfortunately, we have, a society where a lot of us base what we are spiritually based on our immediate surroundings and what's like in our pockets and shit.
Well, you're right, and I'll tell you one thing, man. I'm sorry, I'm talking over you and everything, but if you had if this was a job that was giving you some kind of monetary salary or whatever like this, your 401k would have you in a position right now to where you could retire. But unfortunately, it's not like that.
That's true. You know what I mean? Yet, what I know is that everything, every stitch, every book of knowledge that I have accumulated, I had to get myself. These people, I was doing this before these people even knew me. You know what I mean? So by the time it came a situation where, through people, befriending you and urging you and encouraging you to do shit, once I started to do it, I could see, okay, well, this is another extension now of what it is. But then when you get out of the disillusionment and start to realize what's really going on, then it becomes a thing like, oh, okay, well, I can only mess with this person up to a point. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Get you caught up.
Yes, sir. They will get you caught up, and you'll be out there, talking about, spaceships and all this. So, it is what it is. You can feel how you want to feel about it, But as far, I have never seen no spaceship, but I have felt spirituality to where I felt like I was levitating in my spirit. But all this other stuff that, a lot of these cats are on, that's your thing. I'm not going to take that in because I haven't experienced that.
Indeed. I understand what you mean totally. But again, we are all representation of so-called black consciousness.
Exactly.
So each one of us in that way as being archetypes for our so-called generation are really mirrors of non-physical energy, you know what I mean, that is being manifested physically now through the opinions and the consciousness level that's being exhibited by me or anybody else that allegedly does what it is I guess I do. But
man, you got it, man. You definitely have it, at
the same time, I appreciate that. But at the same time, in realizing that nobody can do what I do, just like I can't do what you do, and so forth and so on, it can become a reality check for all of us. You know what I'm saying? But because there are other factors involved with the motivations of these people that are now becoming more and more apparent. Now, activate in a manner that allow us to see why we didn't participate in certain things. You know what I mean?
It's a big old hunk of meat with a bone in it. Everybody need to eat the meat and spit out the bone all together. But, of course, it's like this, and I always look at it like this. It's like a doctor, right? Most doctors say they're trying to help the community. But a doctor, if you go see a doctor, you're going to pay half your check.
That's right.
So you're not really trying to help me. You're helping yourself.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
You more like how I would say, you more like you're doing community service, man.
Thank you.
It's all what is it? It's all voluntary, man. That's how I look at you, man.
It is, and it has been, and the times in which we could have, again, participated in things that turned out to be, again, fiascos, psychological operations, these things that we as even conscious people don't believe actually go on in our community, that we would actually be at a place where something like that pop off. Not all the time when people beef with each other, it'd be real. It'd be other shit going on. Sometimes. Yeah,
that's that Jay-Z. Nah, that's all that is planned. It's organized that way, to bring attention to both parties.
Gotta watch out, especially when people start to admit that, they have done, wagers as to how you or I, as black people, are going to react to the things they say. That's not cool.
Exactly. Exactly, man. You know what? Cool. They can sit here and take a census on me anytime they want to, because one thing I do know is the ancients. One thing I do know is they didn't give a fuck if they was dead or alive or while they was living. Whatever comes my way as far as blessings, I'll take it. But I know it's something better out there. So, I mean, if they can take a census on me, they could be tapping my phone. I don't care about that.
Right.
Because when it's my time to go, I'm free.
That's right. They can't tie you to none of these Al-Qaeda Muslim groups, crazy extreme. You can't set me up like that, because I've become so aware of certain things that people just match certain things they say, certain things I ask them, and I find out. It just be like, okay, you, and they may not even know that they are sent, but we all come from somebody, and
exactly.
That somebody used to have a lot of money. So,
yeah, I feel you on that, my brother.
Somebody as us had a lot of money, man. They are living off that now, high off the hog. But now the time's coming where they can't hold it together. They can't. Just one man.
And it's showing whoever we all come from is showing, and whoever that is showing in all their kids.
Right. That's right. And that's all we could do, bro. That's why I really thank you for calling and sharing that with us as well as the community. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, man. Don't stop. Please don't stop. It's time for me to move on and do more research on my own. But please don't stop, my brother.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate that, man. Let's keep it rolling.
Yes, sir. Take care of yourself now.
You as well, fam. Peace be to you,
all right.
fam. 321. You on Super Heru Radio? Peace.
How you doing?
Hey, I'm good, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You was going in tonight, brother. As always.
How you doing?
I'm good, my brother. I'm good. Yeah, you made a statement about 1526.
You speak a little louder. I can't hear you.
Yeah. Wait. You made a statement about 1526 as it regards to Spain. Can you repeat that again, please?
Say that again.
You made a statement about Spain in terms of the origin of the name?
Right. That the term Spain itself, as people were calling themselves Spanish, like those people who were called Spanish were either from Castile or Aragon. And Castile and Aragon were kingdoms that were fiefdom kingdoms of the Moorish, of the traditional Moorish kingdoms that had existed for the past 800 years up to that point. And those people had Caucasian, what we would today see as so-called white people, serfs that lived under them, that tilled their land and did stuff for them, but they worked almost like thieves. While at the court, they, you know what I mean, they practiced a form of, let's say, Moorish habit, but it wasn't the traditional Moorish habit of, let's say, the government that was running the kingdom or the empire at the time. It was more of a Franciscan type, Charlemagne type, Morisco. So these people became known as Moriscos. And so these Moriscos, you know what I mean, began to want their own, you know. But remember, these people grew up in, quote unquote, Andalusia, right, for the past 800 years. So these people were what we would consider today, if we looked at them today, people who would look like Dominican or Cuban, or, you know what I mean, something like that, you understand? Not the people that you see like Clive Owen and, you know what I mean, Kate Blanchett dressed up in the robes as playing the people of that time, you understand? She, if it was an accurate historical portrayal of the time, would be one of the peasant people that was out and wasn't even really in the movie like that. You know what I'm saying? Yet after the Reconquista, we had the Renaissance, you know, and then from the Renaissance we had the, you know, Reclamation, and then from the Reclamation they had the Reformation, and then from the Reformation, see, they had the I forget the name of it, but it all accumulated in what they call the Age of Reason. And so this is when they began to come up with the formula of eugenics, where they could create a society where they could retell how all of this happened, in which now when we talk about it, we sound crazy. But it doesn't change the fact, you know, like one of the discrepancies they put out is that the Morisco thing started from the Catholic thing, and that the Catholics basically enforced that on those Moors when they forbid them to dress with feathers and Moorish habit and stuff. But that's not true, because it existed prior to that in the form of the term mudejar. You know, that's what the Moors called the Castilians and the Aragonese, because they knew that they was basically they what would be their Spanish children. You understand?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah, and then you said someone in 1526, someone made the world about 100 years.
Yeah, Charles V was, I believe it was 1526, came and said that from this point on, all the dominions would be called, that were Moorish, would be now be dubbed as Spanish, and that the empires of the Moors in the New World would be referred to as New Spain or Spanish territory. And then once that was decreed, the term Spain or Spaniard became, you know, what they want. It went from Castile and Aragon or whatever to Spain. But Isabella had a change of heart due to the fact, again, she was raised under Moorish women who happened to be Coptic or Christian. And due to Ferdinand's abuse of women, allegedly, or whatever, he was really into the Catholic thing. And so he allied with the judge executioner of the Reconquista to try to get her to basically give up the last of the Moorish dominions in the New World to the so-called Catholic system that we now know as the Catholic system.
Wow, definitely. Really appreciate that, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
347. Four on Super Heru Radio.
Hello?
Peace, Queen. How you doing?
Hey, hold on just a second. Someone wants to talk to you here.
Peace, King.
Peace. How you doing, Lord?
I'm doing good, man. It's Kevin from Charlotte.
Indeed, I remember. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I just want to talk to you about something, man. Recently, I was denied a job somewhere up here in Charlotte, and one of my friends got the job, and I went to go pick him up from his orientation, and I saw it was mostly females and like metrosexual or like, basically like
homosexual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And and this was for a job working with children. And I just want to know how you felt about that because I had some ill feelings about that. I just want to know what you had to say about that.
You know what that's about? It's a form of retarding our future by the sexual molestation of our youth in mass by different operatives based upon generational, satanic, ritualistic, MK Ultra type abuse. You'll probably be denied the job because you might have been put in a position where you might have felt like you had to do something. And maybe the creator was like, nah, don't get that deep, son. You know what I mean? It's probably better for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that whole thing is what I was talking about. We were dealing with couples. I was talking about last night and from the revelation and the fact that once we realize that we are all, in a sense, moon products of moon ritual, meaning moon children, meaning children who may at some point in the family line been attributed to some sort of satanic black magic, either forced on them or being participants of. And because we don't accept that that's real, we don't try to get that out of the family bloodline.
Right.
It used to be when the baby came out to the circle, when the baby was born, like in Andalusia, they had a custom when the baby was born, they would go to the nearest river and look at the baby themselves holding the baby in their hand. And said that they used to see, they would do that to see if the baby was conscious of the water. So if the baby was conscious of the water, then, or the sound of the water, that the baby would be basically somebody to heal or whatever. If the baby was indifferent, then they would know they would have to do certain things to help them, the baby become more spiritual. Just like it's a custom. It used to be a custom of the ancient Malian knights that before the battle, in order to assure they would come home, if they had a first newborn, they would spit in the baby's mouth. So it was also in Ghana they did this. And so what this happened, this created a bond between the father and the son that nobody, including the mother, could ever get in break. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In which, once that happened, the son would never leave you like that, or be allowed to be taken from you like that, because it's a form of transference. So I didn't know that when I had my first son. But I did that with my son now. And I have literally not been without him a day. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
it's still. However, you know, it's show and prove. It's true. At least with me. You know what I mean? That may be different for other people, but in my case, shit is true. So essentially what I'm saying is that the more you know and go back to old shit, the easier it is for you to deal with shit.
Mm-hmm.
The more you try to integrate, the more you try to explain and help these people who really don't want to be helped, but don't want to feel like they left out. You know what I mean? You gotta just let them do what they want to do, man. Most people who really want the knowledge, you come in contact with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I find that happening a lot with a few of my Christian friends. You know, they'll agree to me all up until the point where, you know, it becomes about Jesus dying on the cross. They'll be like, yeah, man, everything you said is right, but you know, the whole Jesus thing, you know, the whole dying on the cross shit, they just can't let that go.
Right. Because it's the reason, you know what I mean? That's the reason, the base aspects of the idea that's implanted. You would have to go like Inception. You have to go like maybe 8 levels deep, and then get like a kick from the realization to come back up to get out of all of the turmoil that's rising up in them as they coming into this now. So you gotta allow yourself the ability to allow them to think they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
and you know that's what I found out. That's what I have to do a lot of the time in order to get them to, you know, I guess accept a lot of the things that I'm saying.
Mhm.
Because if I go along with them and, you know, like sort of ride off a tangent of one of the points they made or something, then they'll be more receptive to it. But if I come off at it like, you know, first of all, you gotta know Jesus ain't, you know, whatever, and you know the whole religion is this and that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll automatically shut down. But then when you go into what Jesus is symbolic of, then they're all for it, you know.
Right.
But when you stay with the actual fact,
it's an idea that's not necessarily untrue. It's just manipulated to be true and untrue.
Right.
So yes, he was crucified on the cross. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. And I believe that, he was the Son of God, or was God. I believe that.
Right.
I also believe that the whole thing was an allegory of the coming together of the different signs of the zodiac, based upon 12 disciples, and him being the 13th, living between Scorpio and Sagittarius. Judas was a Scorpio. You know what I'm saying? Thomas being Sagittarius out. So this dichotomy, if you will, of energy has now become the basis of how people have perceived the religion, when the religion is really just an allegory story of a ritual that was performed on this original man who was born before his time, who had knowledge of self enough, but who was also born of the line and in the ritual of Horus. You know what I'm saying? Or Heru. So the Christ, or the Christ nature of the Christian religion, is the divine nature of man, while the eanity, which means lack of substance, is the lack of substance. You know what I'm saying? So Christianity is the divine nature of man that lacks substance. If you know that eanity is a word, see? But most Christians date everything from the birth of Jesus Christ.
Right.
This is also of Apollo. This is also the birth of Zoroaster, and so forth and so on. But regardless, this is what they did when they merged the pagan belief with the Christian Coptic beliefs, that all were just really different hodgepodge of Islamic and pre-Islamic and Hebrew deity beliefs all into one God, and created a three-headed God for really Caucasian people to worship in their image. And we were not supposed to mess with that image, but due to us using them as means of power, we began to adopt that image as a means of securing the allegiance of these people back to us in the form of the whole Freemasonic partnership, which is why most Freemasons are Christians or Christian pastors and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, my grandfather was one.
Yeah, so was mine.
Mm-hmm.
So,
my uncle and all that, man.
Generational plan. We're talking about a generational thing that's played itself out. And we are the remnants of the people who wasn't against it, who was against it in the first place. So the sexualization of our children is just, or the hypersexualization of them is just another means of control to use the gay thing to shield the true agenda, which is the transhumanist thing, where people begin to have sex with other races or animals and stuff like that, and then produce offspring that can be genetically modified to create a different new type of human. According to Bill Gates, he's now walking around with 2 U.S. Marshals because they're about to arrest all of them niggas. So, who knows, you know?
Yeah. Hold on. Queen got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, dear. Tell Selena I said hi.
I will.
I'm great. And Orion says hi as well. Our dog.
Peace, man. All right. What's up, Orion?
He's looking dead at me. But I have a question about, I guess, communication right now in this, I guess, in terms of the stars or whatnot. Because recently my boss confronted me, you know, and this is also work related, and when she confronted me about something, and it was basically just me not understanding our relationship because she just kind of seems buddy-buddy with everyone else except for me. So, you know, when I talk freely, it's a problem.
Right.
But I'm finding it harder and harder for me to feel human or be human at work, and mind that I work with children as well. But I feel as if the more I receive from my job, or the more I come more and more less spiritual, the more and more I'm just able to get through the day and not bring it home, you know, the stress from home, not butt heads with people at work, which is kind of weird because when I was at work trying to be human, you know, being friendly, you know, being vocal, whatever, people did not respond to me at all. But now that I've receded, people are asking me how my day is, really curious about me. And not only that, but when I'm going to work, I'm feeling like my throat's closing up, and oftentimes I didn't notice I'm grinding my teeth as well. So is there some kind of communication channel, or is my communication chakra just kind of off right now, or is there some kind of communication channel out there that's really I'm feeling?
What's your are you a Taurus?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, it's something with your throat not being able to express itself because Taurus rules the throat. So, have you had instances where you felt like that before, where you wanted to express yourself, but then you feel like you can't?
Yeah, I can feel like I can't articulate it. And it's always.
Have you ever gone to sleep and then when you're waking up you can't move, but you're kind of waking up, can't move?
Yeah, it's always hard for me to get up in the morning. It's always hard for me to get up in the morning.
you're probably just going through a phase of realizing a lot of the toxins around you based upon the level that you're vibrating on now. So you might want to sleep with a bowl of water under your bed.
Okay.
And try to take like a supplement. And it's probably also the ventilation and the air conditioning and stuff in there. Because they want to turn everybody into how you feel, purposeful. So you're not really dealing with human beings there. The people who display that, you have to see over time how that plays out, because most of them are just vying for some sort of power. So the less serious you take, or the less personal you take it, the more they want you to take it personal. So what you should probably also do is start to look into other avenues to express teaching, because that's not one that you're going to be able to actually see a benefit from in the long run.
Right.
You will when a kid comes back 30 years later and be like, oh, you were my teacher in third grade or whatever, But you can't look for that whole system to do anything.
No. No.
I bet you do. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, but I know the show's about to go off. Yeah, but I gotta, and that's what I've been doing. I've been painting more often, so that's definitely helped a lot. Yeah, I'll send you a picture of people painting. But thanks, King. We'll see you probably in a couple of weeks, and me and my best friend come to Miami.
That's what's up, man. Let's see you again. You and the King and the dog be peace, man.
Okay. All right. Good night. Peace.
Peace. Peace. So yeah, guys, that's about it for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. If you want to get in on our class this Wednesday night, holler at me at houseofl@hotmail.com. It's called the Extreme Overview of most things. It's very interesting. You can also check out www.aseer.com. And thank you for those people who have sent donations, those people who have supported. We really appreciate it, really, because it's not, you know what I mean? It's dope when people really find in their hearts to see the vision of what we're striving to do. So for those people who have, we really appreciate it and thank you. And we'll definitely be here next Monday. So with that, if you want to holler at me again about the class or anything else, hit me up. And until then, we say peace. Super Heru Radio, signing off.